What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. Today's guest believes that great design works on multiple levels. He has completed over 150 projects. He designs seamless physical experiences tailored to a client's individuality. He is the owner and co-founder at Meyer Davis Studios Inc. Ladies and gentlemen, Will Meyer. Welcome, Will.
Dan, it's a pleasure to be here.
It's really so awesome to be here. And I don't know how many people know this, but I like to do a little part at the beginning of intro to kind of describe how we all came to be at this moment sitting here with each other. And obviously we work in the same arena. You're designing places, I'm furnishing them. But our kids went to the same nursery school and grammar school in New York City, and we have a lot of mutual friends. And what many of you may not know is that my children were in a friend's science fiction short film, David Gaddy. It was called A Beautiful Dreamer. And then I donated my children to the part, and then you donated your house to have it filmed for part of there. So here we are with your site location and my semi-famous children who are not really famous at all.
Well, first of all, our children going to school together, we got to be friends early on, and we started working together. So that's always a great way to create a village in terms of, living in the same community, kids going to the same school, working on the same projects. It just shows that life is somewhat of a full circle. And that circle gets smaller and smaller when you mentioned David Gaddy's Beautiful Dreamer film,
yes,
which everybody out there should download and watch. It's a little short film, but very heady sci-fi story.
I find that any science fiction or any other story that messes with the space-time continuum is really mind-blowing, because I have such a hard time getting my head around it. And it's interesting because you say, as we gain all of this experience in our lives, our circle gets much smaller, right? And so now here we are coming full circle. And then I wonder, if you were to be able to go back in time and change things, we'll get there later. But I love thinking about that, alternate reality. How can we go back and do this? But David Gaddy and Beautiful Dreamer did an amazing job of helping us think about those possibilities.
I love it. You're going deep already. It's getting off to a big start. Can't wait to do a deep dive.
Yeah, and I miss David Gaddy so very, very much, and I'm just excited to see him this summer out in Fire Island. It's warming up and just all very exciting.
Excellent. No, we miss the Gaddys too. So this was the portion of our talk that we praised David Gaddy. So
yes,
did we check that box?
Yeah, check that box. Let's move on. So I guess most recently we saw each other at the HD Summit down in Miami. And it was interesting because we were at a table having breakfast with all of these other, I guess, competitors of yours, but really colleagues, just, people also designing built environment, designing hotels, restaurants, bars, resorts. And what was interesting to me is that there's this kind of provenance of so many people in our industry that, they started up under Michael Bedner, or they started up under Trish Wilson, or, there's so many others that, were the OG hotel designers, right? But I was amazed that I really got the feeling that you and Gray kind of came out of nowhere and just have built this incredible business, working on incredible projects everywhere. And you've kind of done it kind of coming out of a vacuum, or coming out of a black hole from somewhere, to go back into the space-time continuum, and have just really charted this amazing path forward. So I just wanted to kind of hear about your origin story.
Looking back on our 22-year history, it's a great question that you just asked, because I rarely go back to thinking about the beginning and the origins. But early on, Gray and I, being architecturally educated and working on larger scale architectural residential projects, realized that we wanted to bring that world into hospitality. And we had the idea of moving into that hospitality space in hotels and restaurants and that world. And I can't say any other way besides we just sort of willed it to happen. We put ourselves out there, we chased projects in that arena, and we learned about that world. And I think because we approached it in that sort of, I would say, in a kind of a, do I want to say the word naive? I'm not sure I do, but we approach it in a fresh way where we didn't have any preconceptions about that world. We
You know
approached
what?
it.
I want to go right into that naive thing, because I think that's really at the crux of this origin story. And I think that that naivete, or even there's a book that's called Rookie Smarts that I read, and it's how when you bring up new people, or you're mentoring a young an up and comer within your industry or your company, or just somewhere from within your community, it's really interesting because the people who don't have that institutional knowledge, so to speak, often come up with the best and newest and most creative and freshest ideas. So I love that you did say naive, and it's this whole idea of like, how can you get fresh eyes, thoughts, and thinking on these challenges and constraints, and how do you push the envelope on them to create something new?
Well, I think that you're touching on something that, now that we've been in the industry for so long, you're inspiring me to get back in touch with my inner rookie,
Good.
so that we can keep on bringing freshness to the world through hospitality.
I love it. And I also think where you and Gray, from doing your residential thing and also, over the past 20 years, just saying, hey, we got to really get into hospitality and do more hotel projects. How did you, I guess, like, take us even a step further back? I want to know, how did you meet Gray? Like, what was your first encounter with him? Where did you guys know that the light went off and you're like, oh, wow, we are meant for each other?
Well, Gray and I met in architecture school at Auburn University. He was in fifth year architecture school. I was in first year. We had a couple of mutual friends. Gray says he doesn't really remember me from school, but when you're a younger classman, you know the upperclassmen, right?
Yeah.
When you're an older classman, you don't really know your the lowly younger students. But we did have several mutual friends that connected us when we both were in New York. And we had a few professors that we both really loved from Auburn that would visit New York and have get-togethers with us there, and encourage us to get together and form an office. And that was the impetus to, Gray and I didn't really ever think of it until this one professor, David Brawley, suggested it at a little dinner we were having. And we kind of looked at each other and thought, that kind of makes sense. And the rest is history.
Are you still in touch with David Brawley?
Yes, he is. He's a beautiful painter, and does architectural murals and paintings, and he's just a creative guy. He's an amazing teacher, amazing painter, and someone that we still keep in touch with.
So what's interesting is, if going back to that idea of naivete or rookie smarts, right? There's so many times in all of the conversations and meetings and collisions that we all have, where someone is like, oh, you should talk to this person, or you should talk to this person. I would say most of us, or I'll speak for myself, I love connecting people, but there are times when I'm just closed off to that opportunity of that collision. And where other people can see that this 1+1 = 3, or in your case of Will and or of you and Gray, it's 1+1 could = 5. So when David said that, how did you know that that was a special moment when he was connecting you two, and you didn't just let that, like many other connections or conversations, kind of go by? Oh, that would be nice. How did you know that it was like a real deep connection?
Well, Gray and I always had always gotten along very well, but I also knew how talented Gray was, and I think that knowledge was sort of, and respect was mutual.
Mhm.
And we also have the same kind of, um, kind of, I would just say a similar demeanor and personalities that are compatible. But no, we Gray and I have never really had any um, uh, blow-ups with each other or anything like that. We just always, there's a mutual respect,
Mhm.
and I think it's because we recognize that the best idea is the best idea, and it doesn't matter where it comes from.
Mhm.
Um, and that's true between the two of us, but also true with our entire staff. We
Mhm.
we get ideas, we collaborate, we work to find what's best, and there's no sense of the authorship or ego in the room. It's really about making the best possible spaces, the most enlightening experiences, and it's not about who it came from. It's about what it is.
Yeah. So hearing about your and Gray's successful partnership, thinking about all of the other partnerships that we hear, I would say like so many partnerships don't work. Many do, but many don't. Um, how do you and Gray as partners connect and make sure that you guys are fully in alignment as you're going through your day to day and growing, and just making sure that you guys are working truly as partners and building all the success that you guys have built over the years?
Day to day, Gray and I start with a call before the workday begins.
Mhm.
Um, it starts off as a social call. How's the weather? What'd you do last night? Um, Boring things like that. What do you know, just small talk. And then it works its way into, did you see that drawing that came in last night? What'd you think about it? I was thinking about this plan, the circulations kind of funny. Let's get that worked out. Um, then to business talk, has this client paid? What's what's going on with this contract? We cover all the important,
Mhm.
touch points in, the first 10 or 15 minutes of the day. And then the day unfolds and we get on, we go to our meetings, we get on our Zooms, we run to the airport, whatever the day
A lot of
entails.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So going back to when you and Gray first started doing your residential work, and then when you made that switch, like walk us, you said that you had this feeling that you knew you had to get into hotels. Walk us through that first kind of residential, the transition from the residential to your first commercial project. And like, how did you know that that was your calling as a partnership?
Well, early on, we started in 1999, and we started off with um, houses, apartments, but one of our earliest projects that a lot of people don't know about was the V Bar in Las Vegas, we did in 2000, um, and it was with David Rabin and Will Regan, and their idea was to introduce this cool New York drinks bar, cocktail bar in Las Vegas. And believe it or not, it wasn't a common thing in Las Vegas. It was, fanny packs and, not really sexy looking crowd.
Fanny
And
packs are coming back.
they, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to sort of offend
The
anyone
little
out there that's
Chanel
wearing a
ones,
fanny
I
pack.
see them a lot. All those
It's
little designer fanny packs, they're rearing their heads up again.
they're rearing, yeah, no pun intended. No, but Will and David had this idea of introducing this to Las Vegas. So we designed this amazing, sexy cocktail bar called the V Bar in the Venetian in
Mhm.
year 2000. And it sort of, I feel like that sort of ushered in the sort of avalanche of cool bars and nightlife into Las Vegas that was previously not really there.
I remember that it was super elevated, and that whole Venetian experience. Well, I'm actually, when I first went to Venice, and I went into St. Mark's Square, I was like, oh wow, this kind of looks like Las Vegas. I was very upset with myself that my first memory of, or my first association with my experience in Venice was the actual Venetian. It was pretty crazy from just that heightened level of theater. How did you wind up?
Dan, that's getting back to your, time continuum idea
Yes,
that started this whole conversation.
totally. It was mind bending. I didn't like it very much that happened. Ugh. But how did you wind up going from more residential projects to get, that's like a pretty high profile in 1999 or 2000? That was like the place to be, and it still is, like as far as all of the conferences and a lot of the higher end business travel, it all goes there. But like, how did you wind up securing that job?
Well, we knew David and Will just socially in New York,
Mhm.
and it just kind of came out of a conversation. So we enjoyed that as one of our first projects, and then we continued on into more and more residential projects. But then in 2004, we designed a great little restaurant in the West Village called Moss Farmhouse, which is sadly no longer there.
I remember
And
that.
but it was again super cool, beautiful, sexy space that had it was a really amazing culinary experience. And again, you know, these were two special projects that out of the first, I would say 15, 20 projects we did, these two really were exciting to us. And
Mhm.
we realized this wasn't our main part of our business, but we really liked it.
Mhm.
So we had that kind of moment of realization that these projects excite us, and we're really offering something to the design world that's not really out there. So we took stock in what we had done and thought, the world needs more of this.
So, okay, I see the excitement as you're kind of walking back memory. You're going into that black hole of the memory and traveling back in time. And I see the excitement. And if between Moss Farmhouse and the
V
V
Bar.
Bar, if you could identify in that excitement and what was different from what was already in the marketplace, if you will, and with your rookie smarts approaching these two, a bar and a restaurant, um, what do you think? What was a theme or a unifying idea or thesis that you think generated so much of that excitement and kind of changed the arc of your company and your partnership?
Well, it was creating warmth and kind of a residential uh, tactile experience within a hospitality space. And I saw how people responded to it,
Mhm.
and it was something special. We noticed people responding to that world that we were creating, these environments we were creating in a really positive way. And like any uh, performer or artist or anything, I think you get a feed of energy off of how the audience perceives your work.
And I think that's also a great transition as far as that residential feel. And it was just different. And you could see the excitement from the people interacting with your built environment that you designed. But as you take that onto this off ramp, which really turned into to be an on ramp into this building this fabulous business and working on some of the most incredible projects over the past 20 years. How did that help you define and identify and connect with what hospitality is?
Well, that's an interesting question, because with the the lion's share of our work being residential and only having a couple of hospitality projects, we did have that realization that these worlds and these demographics weren't drastically different. The people that we were designing houses for go to the restaurants that we were designing, and the people that go to the restaurants we were designing live in houses that we design. So knowing that demographic and the multi, faceted sides of their wants and needs in terms of their environment that they appreciate, there's things to find throughout that exposure to these different worlds that are actually much more similar than they are different.
And then as you started that study into hospitality and taking these residential sensibilities over and seeing how people reacted, how do you and then the evolution that you've had since then, how do you define hospitality today as you will, or you and Gray? How do you guys define hospitality?
Gray and I look at hospitality as an elevated sense of the home, a heightened sense of residential comforts and elements that create a new space within the hospitality world that make people feel comfortable, make people feel inspired, that create a new turning of the dial of their experience in the hospitality world, but grounded by that sense of residential home feel that makes people feel comfortable.
And I know that we're talking about you and Will as a partnership, and that since David Browley introduced you guys,
Brawley, yeah.
Brawley, since he introduced you to, you didn't do it alone. Like, it started off as the two of you, but what also is amazing about what you and Gray have built is you attract some of the coolest, most fun, most creative, most talented teammates to come work with you and that you mentor. What do you think the great teams that you've built over the years, and then they've gone and done other things and people stay and go, but it's almost like where we started talking about how there was the Michael Bedner or the Trish Wilson who launched all these careers, like how you've also done that on your own, coming into this from a residential world. Like how are you attracting and improving, I don't know, how are you attracting and mentoring all of these great people that come work with you guys?
So Dan, I'm really glad you asked about that aspect, because it's been, me talking about, Gray, you and I talking about Gray and Will and, all this, this partnership, which is that was the beginning of everything. But what we do at Meyer Davis is we create that space for talent to convene. And when we have that sort of open-mindedness in terms of the best idea, you tend to attract cool people that love that freedom and that thrive off of that sense of collaboration that Gray and I try to kind of maintain that space to let that happen. And we've been blessed with this amazing chemistry that we created over the years, where people come and they have that opportunity for that creative freedom and they take that out to the world, whether it be in our office when they work with us, or when people decide they want to do something else. We support that, and we love to see those seeds go out into the world and do great things. So it brings us a lot of joy to see that happening in our world.
I want, and also I want to dig, and you've said it a couple of times, and I know you truly believe this. And I think actually that is why you attract such great talent as well. But it really is that I've seen, heard, and just not just from you in talking to you, but also people that work for you and have worked for you. The best idea is the best idea. And to me, as an outsider, what I'm hearing is, look, you might be that rookie coming in, but you're going to have a whole different sensibility. You're going to have a great idea. And you know what? Ego aside, that best idea is going to win. Am I seeing that correctly as an outsider?
Yes, you are. I think no, look, it's fun to watch people grow, and people have, their aha moments, and find something that we encourage, and they focus on and make it better. It's when you see this happening day in, day out, and over the years, you realize that you create a special environment for people to grow and become strong creatives and take that out to the world. So it does give us energy to watch that energy be born and flourish.
Yeah, and it's almost, and for a lot of these conversations that I'm having, the ones that where like kind of things that really resonate with me is, nurturing this young talent and letting their best ideas win and being like, hey, go for it, make it happen. Can you think of an example of a new teammate, a new hire, someone who's in that the rookie smart kind of idea, where they're working on their first or second project, and they come up with an idea that just really resonates and is memorable for you, that really made a project super special?
Are you looking for, sorry, are you looking for like a specific example of someone kind of doing
Yeah,
something that
just
blew
like
our
an
mind?
example, either specifically about a person, or just in general on a project, like, oh my God, we did this project and we had this challenge, and one of our new teammates came in and was like, hey, let's think about it this way. And then it like it basically changed the tenor of the project.
Um, I mean, what you're asking is so commonplace that it literally happens multiple times every day. There's I could rack my brain and think about the most recent one or the first one, but we could spend all day long talking about that.
But that's truly because the best idea is the best idea.
Exactly. And look, for finding the best idea, there's probably 100 bad ideas that come before that too. So
Right.
it's editing and finding a project through iteration, and finding what's the essence of a project, and discovering that. And I think sometimes it comes to you quickly, sometimes it takes a lot of work. And when we talk about collaboration within our office, that's half the equation. The other half is working with our amazing partners and our brands, and people that we work with in the industry, from Four Seasons to Mandarin Oriental to Rosewood to Auberge to W Hotels. It just, the list goes on, and apologies if I've left people off with a short list, but it goes on and on. And we discover new things about ourselves by working with experts in our industry. And I think we all get energized from these deep dives into what each property wants to be. They all find their own road, and our work tends to look like where it is and who it's about, rather than look like us, if that makes any sense.
100%. And I think a great example of that from a recent thing that I've seen, and I'm a little bit of a fanboy on, and you mentioned W Hotels, but that W Hotel you did in Rome, it was in Rome, right?
Yes, we just
Oh my,
finished that property.
so that's a great example of like Rome has its own unique, it's Rome. Like there's no comparison to that to anywhere else in the world. But it's such, you guys really kind of, I think it was like super different from anything that I've seen in a really long time. Walk us through that one.
So the W Rome, which just opened a couple of months ago, where actually Gray and I are traveling to on Monday for the official grand opening party, hashtag live eternal, was a really fun deep dive into the history of Rome. What we loved about Rome, what we found and we create our narrative around, was that it's the eternal city. And what makes it amazing is these layering of eras and culture and architecture and design that is special because of all of the layers on top of each other. You're inspired by ancient, buildings, or Renaissance buildings, or mid-century buildings, to modern buildings, and all of that art, architecture, sculpture, design layered on is what makes Rome special. So the interior of the W Rome is this amalgamation of all those layers, and really exploring and finding all of those and putting them all together in one palette. We always say our design inspiration is edited less, what's the essence? We turned that on its head at W Rome. With W Rome, it was more is more is more is more. We just kind of let it all kind of get out there, and it's an explosion of color and design and stone and wood and metal and lighting, and really an exercise in maximalism.
Oh, I like that, maximalism. I didn't realize it was opening next week. For some reason, I thought it was open already. So the timing is great here.
It's open and running, but the
big party.
Gray and I are rarely miss a big party, so we're going to be there for that.
Are you going to be dressed in a toga or as a gladiator?
We are. It's full toga, and it'll be a big toga party. Yeah,
good. I actually just recently got back.
Ray and I'll be wearing color coordinated togas.
I love it. I recently got back from Paris, and I hadn't been there in a while.
You can edit that if you want to.
No. We're going to keep that in there. Unless you want. But I recently got back from Paris, and one of the things that struck me about Paris was it's so beautiful and so nice and put together and clean. Whereas I think what I love about Rome, and I love that idea of maximalism and layer upon layer, because Rome has this grittiness with all of these, it's like grittiness within a jewel box, if you will. And I think like just from the shots that I've seen of some of the areas that you've done at that hotel, it's I totally see that maximalism, and and Rome embraces its grittiness, whereas I think Paris tries to clean it up, and it's both great experiences. They're just different. But I love all the layers of Rome. And I think you really did capture that in that project.
Thank you. No, it's a really fun property. And if you have a chance to get to Rome sometime soon, you have to make sure you get there, to everyone out there, because it's Rome is experiencing, there are a lot of new properties that are happening there, and there's a lot of I would say I see a lot of new interest in Rome from travelers to designers, and there's a lot of relevance to what Rome is doing now.
In addition to Rome, Will, what is exciting you most about the future?
We are working on several new really interesting projects. We're doing a new Four Seasons in the Red Sea in Saudi Arabia. That's a Norman Foster designed property that for the architecture, and it's a low impact environmental sustainable project where these very light structures touch on this island in the Red Sea, and our design is based on this kind of nomadic journey. So that's a really interesting, that's a very interesting project. We're doing a really beautiful new, this is a branded residential tower that we're doing in Miami and Brickell for Baccarat.
Great.
Which is really amazing because it's the hotel in New York is so beautiful that Gilles Bossier designed several years ago, and this will be the next Baccarat property. But it's bringing that sense of French crystal craft that's just amazing precision world, and finding out how that works in the tropics in Miami, and how what makes that beautiful and relevant there. That's a very fun project.
That's an exciting one, because I have to say that Baccarat in New York, I think that's one of my favorite, definitely top 3 favorite hotel experiences. I didn't work on it in any way, shape, or form, but I've done staycations there a bunch of times, and it is just amazing, just from obviously the built environment, the aesthetic, but also just the people that work there care in such a incredible way. I love it.
Another project that we absolutely love that just opened as well is the new Auberge Iterio, which is in Riviera Maya.
Oh, great.
Just opened in the new year, and the photography is just coming back from it. It's truly special. We worked with Kemper Hires as the creative director of Auberge, and I think it's something truly special. It doesn't look like anything in Mexico or the rest of the world, for that matter. And in our earlier discussions of how residential becomes relevant in a heightened theatrical way in design, this is a true example of that. That comes together in this really beautiful, comfortable, unique setting there on the Riviera Maya coast.
And what do you think is the most unique experience or moment within that hotel? Like what excites you the most about that one?
Upon entry, you enter into this almost a village of structures, with kind of joined by this water feature that you walk along this promenade, and off of that promenade, surrounded by water, you have these beautifully designed structures that become the spa, the wellness center, all the amenities are sort of spokes off of that main promenade. And then you move across the mangroves. Just to go back, the entire building is set within this beautiful carpet of mangroves, and the developers were able to work with the government to preserve like 90% of the mangroves, or some percentage like that. And this building is a very light footprint on top of that carpet of green. So you're hovering above these mangroves, and the buildings sort of have this light impact on that. Within the buildings, we create this rich palette of materiality that speaks to that sort of sense of home that I was talking about before. Beautiful textiles, beautiful, I would say really moody stones and woods and textures that create a really comfortable, unique environment.
I think what's really cool to hear you talk about from Baccarat, New York, which you didn't work on. Now you're doing the Baccarat in Miami, but that Baccarat, New York is like, for me personally, it's like an exquisite jewel box of a hotel experience, not just from the design, but also the people. And it's very unique. And then to hear you really and see you light up so much to talk about this Iterio Auberge down in Riviera Maya. It's interesting because that, as you're describing the Iterio, which I don't have familiarity with, but just hearing you describe it, it's so completely different from Baccarat, New York. And there's a unifying thread through that of Kemper. And it's amazing, like if you think about how different those two experiences are, and that how he is a thread between both of them. And that just is a testament to just not doing the same thing over and over and always reinventing.
Yeah, you know, it's creatives like Kemper that we did the one hotel with, that we
Oh, and the one
have
hotel. Oh my
been
God. Yeah.
working on with, you know, on auberge properties now, and now with, you know, Tony Machado as the creative director at Starwood, with that we're working on the Baccarat residences, which is, you know, not only are we making a Baccarat for, you know, South Florida, but it's also not hotel, it's residences. So we're interpreting that that idea, you know, into a much more residential kind of setting, but, you know, filled with amenities. So it becomes an example of another thing that I think is really interesting that I'd love to bring up is with branded residences, you see the world of hospitality um, really coming together in these residential buildings where um, hotel resort experience is saturating and taking over the way people live. And I think that's an interesting kind of turning of the dial again, where we're finding that we're creating these experiential hospitality environments for people to live in, and it's a good example of how these worlds are becoming more and more entwined in this really interesting way.
Well, it's also interesting if you go back to your origin story of starting out in residential, and now it's almost like going full circle. And you've been in this hospitality laboratory for so long with the origin in residential, and now coming back full circle. And I think it's also interesting how Baccarat as a brand for the crystal and all the things that that stands for, they've done such an incredible job of creating this hotel experience, which is, to me, hotels and brands, it can be, if done well, the most completely immersive experience for a brand, right? So Will, um go back to a time when you were your first year architecture student. Okay, Gray is the fifth year. He's old. He's the wise sage there. You're the young 18-year-old freshman. And then we want to go back into that space-time continuum, right? You are able to transport back in time to your in front, and you right now are standing in front of your 18-year-old self. What kind of advice do you give yourself?
I would say to keep my mind open and try to find uh, the niche where the world appreciates what you do. And when you find it, go for it.
I love it. Well, hey, thank you very much. Before we wrap, how can people connect with you?
So I would love to hear from anyone out there who's listening. Go on meyerdavis.com. There's info at meyerdavis.com. Or you can email me at willmeyer@meyerdavis.com.
Awesome.
Simple and easy.
Well, Will, I just want to say thank you very much for your time. This has just been a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Dan. I love talking to you, and let's do it again sometime.
We will. And I just also want to thank our listeners. I hope this talk has evolved your view on how we deliver hospitality and make sure that everyone feels cared for in our world. So if this did change your thinking, please share it with a friend. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All right,
Take
Will.
care.
Thanks, man.
Bye.